Joe Staley went on the radio this morning. We talked about this on Twitter, but it's worth talking about from different perspectives. Staley isn't on the team anymore. So when he goes and says that he's still upset about the loss, obviously, and he's bitter because he says that Nick Bosa got held a bunch of times and the refs didn't call it. I went on with my dad earlier and was like, man, get over it. This is indicative of the team's inability to move on and deal with reality. But let's just talk about Joe, who's not on the team anymore. What do you think of Joe saying this stuff?
So the first thing is I saw you tweet about it. So the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I saw your tweets this morning. First time I went on Twitter, first thing I see is you making some, sarcastic jokes about the Niners in 2019. And I was like, oh God, who said what? Please don't be Mike McGlinchey who said something. And I saw it was Joe Staley, and I was a little shocked. Like, wow, Joe Staley said that. So my first reaction was, well, Grant, you're wrong, because guess what? Joe Staley doesn't have to get over it because he doesn't have to play football next year or the year after that. So he can stay lingering. Now, it might not be the most healthiest thing to do. So maybe you were just looking out for his health. Like, Joe, if you move on, you might feel a little better mentally. You might have a little angst taken off you. But Joe Staley seems to look great. Everything seems to be working well for him in life. He's giving Kyle Shanahan big hugs after roof-to-roof 40-yard throws. So I guess he's doing okay. But my second reaction was, this is actually something I personally like from athletes. I think oftentimes the expectation from athletes and the way we kill athletes for certain honest reactions is a little extra. Like Cam Newton after the Super Bowl got destroyed. But really, what I respected from Cam Newton was, wow, Cam Newton had the real raw emotion of just losing the Super Bowl. And he is human. Like, he didn't just come out and give PC answers. He is human.
And he's
you can see how much it affected him. Right. And so and he took Philly Brown and Jericho Cotchery to the Super Bowl. That itself.
He did. There was no one on that team, though.
And just going back to Staley, like, I think too often we expect athletes to always have the CEO answer, but we also expect them to be so competitive that they invest their entire life into a sport. And then once you invest your entire life in the sport, 20 minutes later, you're not supposed to be emotional about it. You're supposed to immediately give the correct answers. I actually appreciated Joe Staley reacting the way, 12-year-old, all of us would have reacted after losing something, or whatever sport we played, coming home, being salty, complaining about the refs with the team, saying some snarky comment to your teammates about the referee, blaming the referee, all those things. Like, those are natural human reactions to losing in something that you're invested in and you're competitive about and you want to do. And I actually enjoy watching players give these reactions because I think it humanizes them. It makes more sense for Joe Staley to react like this than it does for Joe Staley to come out and say, we just didn't do enough. We should have been better. I should have been better. All of that. Because
that's what the head coach says.
Even the head coach, honest to God, like, that's why sometimes McVay comes across as a little disingenuous to me, because there's no way your first reaction can be this, just, I was all wrong. I was the worst. I'm this bad. Because there's no way you could have internalized the game that much by then. That's why a lot of coaches, when I played soccer, two coaches I had this thing called the 24-hour rule. After the game, you don't get to discuss the game with them or you or anything about the game until 24 hours after, because they wanted you to not be emotional and reflect and really look at the game and be like, okay, how did I play? What are the things I did? What are the things I did? And especially because soccer is a lot more tactical game than people realize. So basically, I think our coach, what he really wanted us to do was think about, tactically why you were using certain positions, why you were asked to do these things. And then did it make sense? And did you play well within that confine? And that way you can also have a better understanding and, a better acknowledgement for the coach and what he had to go through and all of that. And I think that 24-hour rule should exist in football. Unfortunately, they have a 15-minute rule and they shove a mic right into your face right after the loss. And I respect the hell out of every athlete who comes out and lie. I think they're frankly lying because I don't think they feel like it's all my fault. We should have been better, all of that. And so I actually personally really enjoyed this view of real raw emotion from Joe Staley, because to me, it humanizes him.
Sure. And I think when I was I wasn't criticizing him. I said this is basically indicative of the Niners viewpoint. And to me, that's a problem. But he's off in his own world. He retired. And it reminded me of his career arc. And I think it's fair to say that his career, there was a tragic element to his career. It was a success. He's a borderline Hall of Fame player. He probably won't make the Hall of Fame, but he'll be in the Niners Hall of Fame. He could say he's the best left tackle they've had since Bob St. Clair played right tackle. He could be the best left tackle the Niners have ever had. And that's a great career. But he was in 2 Super Bowls, and he should feel like he should have 2 rings. I mean, they were right there both times. And the second time, I mean, I could see him. It's so painful, him saying, if it wasn't just for this one call or these few calls, I would have a ring right now. And it's got to be from that perspective, it's a tragic end to his career. That's the last game he played, Fish.
Yeah. And I think there's another aspect of tragedy to his career that you and I talked about earlier on the phone. And it's the aspect of, to me, Joe Staley has been appreciated more in the last year and a half when he didn't play for the 49ers than the 13 years he did play for the 49ers. I think a lot of people forget that. If you look at the beginning of Joe Staley's career, if you remember, a lot of people wanted him gone in 2009, 2010. When they extended him I think they extended him in 2010. It was premature. Trent Baalke extended him. He said he's playing like one of the best left tackles in the NFL.
I think it was 2011. I think it was my first year on the beat. And I remember thinking, why?
A lot of people were upset about it. A lot of people were upset about it. They said, why should you pay him? And that 2011 to 2014 run, even though Joe Staley was the best player on the offensive line, he was not regarded as the best player on the offensive line. Mike Iupati was regarded as the best player on the offensive line. He was a poor pass blocker. And it goes beyond that. When people were salty, because one of the biggest reasons the Niners chose not to pay Mike Iupati, if you remember, is because it didn't make sense in terms of the financial structure of the roster. Joe Staley never asked for a new contract or never asked for a new extension, in spite of outplaying his current contract throughout that entire 2011 to 2014 run. So he was paid like a mid-tier left tackle, even though he was playing like an elite level left tackle. Mike Iupati was going to get paid like a high level guard, which would mean that he would get paid more than Joe Staley. And I don't think the Niners were ready to do that. That's my probably biggest guess on why they didn't want to pay Iupati. I don't think they wanted to pay Iupati more money than they paid Joe Staley, because Joe Staley was the linchpin of that offensive line. He was the left tackle. So then Mike Iupati, walks, and a lot of people were salty about that. Then Joe Staley, the peak of his career, the prime of his career, really the best years of his career, the Niners were not a good football team, so he didn't get appreciated then. Then I thought the leadership aspect of Joe Staley was interesting, honestly, because nobody ever did portray Joe Staley as the leader of this football team when he was on this football team. No one ever did. I think that's what was shocking to me when everyone said, oh, he's such a big loss, his leadership is such a big loss, because we never got to see that Joe Staley was the leader of this football team. I think, Frank Gore was portrayed as a leader. Vernon Davis portrayed himself as a leader. There were a lot of different guys, Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, but Joe Staley was never really looked at as that figure. I mean, personally, I just looked at him as a cool guy that everybody liked, that did the Joe Show and all of that. And then you realize what a leadership impact he had on this team the year after he retires. And everybody talks about how impactful he was as a leader and everything. So I think that his career in that sense is just tragic, because he's just a guy that never got the appreciation he truly deserved. And I think we were all wrong, honestly, for not giving him that appreciation, because like you said, he's the greatest left tackle in 49ers history. Also, if he had those 2 rings, he'd probably have a stronger case to be in the actual Hall of Fame. And also the other thing that I think so. If you two rings, you might be looked at a little differently, because a lot of people have to go to the Hall of Fame from a guy from those teams. But the other thing that I wanted to say about him is that he made $90 million in his career from the 49ers, and Jimmy's made 87. So that's too bad. That's okay. I saw the mischievous look on your face as your arms came up to look up something. I was like, how much money did the Niners pay Joe? Oh, almost just a little bit more than they've paid Jimmy Garoppolo. That's wrong. That's wrong. They should have paid Joe Staley more. Oh, well, at least they're letting him hang out with their coach.